thanks so much for checking out Imperfect Parent, where we believe that there is no such thing as a perfect parent. And today we had a really fascinating conversation for you. Amber, tell us who we talked to.
So Matt Warner, our campus pastor from our Danville campus, he is a stepdad, and so he kind of shares some of the struggles and advice that he has for people who are a part of a blended family, and the ways that he's navigated that as a dad. And it was really good. I think you guys are going to enjoy this.
Check it out.
Hey, Matt. So we just invited you here today because we'd love for you to share a little bit about your experience of being a stepdad.
Cool.
Like, when did that all start for you?
So I came in the picture when Cole was 5 and Liam was 3, and Annie and I were dating, and about a year and a half later we got married. But I came in pretty early, so that helped me as a stepdad.
How old are they now?
Now they're 12 and 10.
Okay.
So
You've
been in the picture for a while,
I got a little bit of experience.
You're like a pro.
You guys probably should have got someone else, because I have made way more mistakes than I've done things perfectly, and that's even been hard for me in my own journey, because I have more of a perfectionism side to me, where I want to do it right so bad. I don't want to make mistakes. I've always kind of gone the straight and narrow path, and so I've apologized way more than I've wanted to. I've heard from my wife, like, yeah, you should probably go back in there and say you're sorry, way more than I wanted to.
Have you done a lot of, honey, you're right?
Way more of those. And it's been a journey. In fact, I would say this to any step parent, like, if you haven't already discovered this, you're probably going to discover it now, that being a step parent is probably the best way to walk in the Spirit than any other thing you could take on in your life, because there might be people that tell you there's a lot of hard set rules. That's not been my experience. It's a lot more just kind of figuring out as you go, and
trial
being
and error.
humble. Trial and error, and learning to let things go. And it's more about the relationship than it is about rules.
Let me just jump in with a question. I think one of the things as I think about taking two adults, combining them, and then attaching kids. One of the things that one of the biggest questions is how do you go about combining strategies when Annie already has some ground that's been covered.
Yeah.
She has ways of doing things, ways to interact with her boys. Sure. How do you combine those strategies? What has worked for you? How have you pushed through that?
Yeah. So I've had to just learn Annie's like strategies or opinion, or even her voice, oftentimes needs to carry more weight than mine. And probably the hardest moments have been when the male side of me wants to be like, no, my voice, my opinion right here matters most. And that's not to say that there aren't moments where my opinion or my voice maybe should matter, or maybe could matter more.
Sure.
But I've had to learn to let that go.
Yeah.
And just go, you know what, like, if I want to drive this point home, but it's going to come at a cost to my connection with my stepsons, was that worth it? And I've learned the hard way too many times, like, oh, I pushed that way too hard. Like, I needed to let that go. That was more about me than it was about the boys or the discipline moment that I thought needed to be addressed. That was more about my authority issues or my wanting to be in charge issues.
I can see that being really difficult, because even as a dad, biological, I have two biological kids, no, 3 of them.
3.
Parenting will do that to you.
Yeah, right, exactly. There are those moments, and so it's interesting that to hear someone from a different reality say almost the same thing that I would say. Like, there's a balance between relationship and rules, and when we get that wrong, what's at stake? And I guess is there more at stake from your perspective as a parent of 2 boys that are not biologically yours? Are they, as a step parent, is there more at risk if you get the relationship versus rules wrong?
Absolutely. No doubt in my mind there's more at stake. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard where someone grew up with a step parent or, a stepmom, stepdad, and they don't have good stories to share about the stepmom or stepdad. Yeah, more of them are way worse than positive. So I've had to keep that in mind a lot, to say, gosh, how do I want to do this in a way when they're 30 or 40, they're going to actually enjoy their relationship with me versus there's this distance now because I didn't do it well, and I was more on rules than I was on relationship, and so I've learned to err on the side of grace versus truth.
Okay.
I've learned to kind of zip it more than than I thought I was going to have to.
Yeah.
And
I'd imagine your communication with Annie plays a key part in that.
Yeah.
Because there's things that you see and you're just like biting your tongue, right? You said zip it. And then you have to circle around with Annie probably later and go, here's what I was feeling. Why didn't we do this in this situation?
Yeah.
Why, is that accurate?
And sometimes I just have to just trust, like she's reading the situation better. She knows them better. She knows they're bent better than I do, or she gets it better than I do. I just have to kind of trust that, because sometimes we might have a difference of opinion, but she knows it better than I do. Even though I've been in the picture for a long time, I have to trust that and not push against it.
I just think about it like my son, my oldest is 3.5, and I think about how well I know him now, and thinking about somebody stepping into that, trying to play catch up constantly. That's got to be a hard place for you to be in.
Yeah.
And I even think of some situations with my husband where he'll come in and want to be like dad and like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah,
and like we even have these conversations, and he's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
And like there are times as a parent where I feel like we have to weigh out, like, how is this affecting my child, like relationally, and how is it affecting them discipline wise, and what do I need to do as a parent, knowing that every situation and every child is different, because there's probably differences between both of your boys. Of how you handle certain things too.
Totally, yeah. Their personality.
That holds another element of challenge, right?
Yeah, their personality, their bent is different. But I'll add this too. We see this even in Scripture where, and I can be a little more rules focused just by my personality. But we see this even in the Scripture where, if you give too much of the law or too much of like rules, people rebel against it. Like that's why Jesus was so perfect, because he was a balance of grace and truth.
Yeah.
But if you do too much of the law, people want to run away. It produces anger. And so as a parent, you have to be really thoughtful. Like, there's a lot of rules in place, but are they getting the right amount of grace for all those rules? Because if you're not giving the right amount of grace, you could do a lot of damage. And then as a step parent, I think you even err more on the side of grace than rules, because there's not as much grace for you as a step parent.
That's
a good point.
That's really good.
Annie, she could like have a bad day and lose it and maybe snap at the boys, and they're like way more forgiving and like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, it's okay. But there's not as much grace for me as the stepdad. So I have to be careful. Like, and that's nothing against them. I totally get it. Like, there's just not as much grace, so you want to be careful with that.
Well, and I think it's really awesome that you recognize that, because your boys are sitting front row audience to everything that you're doing and how you are playing this whole stepdad situation out. And so in the relationship between you and Annie and how you guys work together, like that is really helping them to see what a good relationship is.
I hope
think
it
that's
is,
really
because
cool.
they're already doomed, because I'm a pastor, so they're already saving up for their counseling and all their therapy, and then I'm a stepdad, so it makes it even worse. So I hope it's good that what they're seeing.
Unpacking that, it made me think of what we at Cornerstone we call fighting for the heart.
Yeah.
And it's that idea that at the end of the day, what's most important is my relationship with my kid.
Yeah.
And I think that even as I think this goes for any parent out there, if you get that wrong and you fight for the rules or the truth versus the grace, you're doing the opposite. And so fight for the heart, I think, is something that comes to mind.
Yeah. I would just speak to that. The scriptures talk about guard your heart because it's the wellspring of life. And parents, that's the key part, is how are you loving your kid's heart? How can you develop a relationship with them so that when they're in high school, they feel totally safe to share with you what's really going on, not the surface level stuff, but the real stuff.
Well, and that's probably that groundwork for that happening is laid early. And we were talking earlier about community and who we surround our kids with. So talk for a second, because I feel this need as a parent, just generally. But what do you do? What do you have in place right now that's helping you set up for success in middle school and high school?
Yeah.
How do you view that? What's your strategy?
I was a youth pastor for 10 years, and so anytime I give parents advice, I tend to say almost the same thing, it seems like. And I tell them, if you can help your kids have good friends in middle school and high school, you are really setting them up well for young adulthood. And the best advice I can give parents is, if you can, not in some bad way, but if you can, start to manipulate almost who their best friends are going to be in 3rd and 4th grade. Because if they're in the wrong peer group by middle school, it's almost too late to undo what's coming their way. It's never too late with God, but it's a lot trickier. So by 3rd and 4th grade, you kind of want to have a good idea of like, oh, all of their families that all my kids are in best friend relationships with, those are all great families. Like, oh yeah, I would feel totally fine doing a sleepover at that house and this house. Like, if you can already kind of get a lot of those boxes checked off by 3rd and 4th grade, middle school will be a lot easier, and I think high school will be it's not a guarantee.
Sure.
But you are setting yourself up well. Like, you want to know, like, man, all those sleepovers, those are going to be great. All those birthday parties, those are going to be great. Like, yep, we're good. So if you can lay the groundwork for that earlier than later. Sometimes we wait too long, right? It's in middle school, then the parents get really like, okay, who are you hanging out with?
Well, the kids are like, I don't want to tell you.
That question should have already been addressed.
Yeah, you have a
earlier.
greater impact on forming your child a little bit more at the earlier ages because they care what you say.
It's almost like there's as a kid goes through elementary, the parental influence is diminishing, and there reaches a tipping point where they probably around that middle school, like you said, where all of a sudden the influence of friends and who I'm hanging out with and all the not parent voices will start meaning more.
Yeah.
And so if you've practiced kind of being around other influences, because as a dad, I want to think that I'm always going to be the most important voice to my kids, right? Or as a mom, like they're never going to want someone else's advice. But the reality is there comes a tipping point. And so what you're saying is it kind of is a general parenting tip.
Yeah. I think one of the things I learned as a youth pastor is, as kids are younger, they want to be right or they want to be good, and as they get older, it's more about I want to be cool or I want to be accepted.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if they're in the wrong peer group, all of a sudden the morals and the values of that peer group,
what's cool,
what's adopted, not necessarily because they're trying to buck you as the authority figure in their life, but because it's more out of survival. Because they're feeling so anxious just about how they're being perceived. They're thinking what other people are thinking about them so much. The other people aren't even thinking about them because they're too busy thinking about themselves. But they're thinking so much about what everyone else is thinking about them. They think everyone else thinks they're dumb. So whatever it takes to feel more accepted, they'll adopt those rules, those morals, those values. And so the more you can help kids connect with other good kids, it helps.
Again, in preparation for this, we were talking about different times where I think the way you described it was wearing different hats. That might not be the expected hat that you kind of go, I'm parent, I wear the parent hat. Can you unpack that? Kind of go through that again?
Yeah, I think some of the best advice I got about being a step parent was there will be moments when you realize you're not wearing the parent hat or the step parent hat. You're wearing a completely different hat, like more like an uncle hat, or more like a coach.
Cool uncle.
The cool
Hopefully.
uncle hat.
Hopefully, right?
Or maybe even like the big brother hat, where you realize I don't have to be the parent right now. Like, I don't have to be the best step parent right now because
might not be what your kid needs right then.
It may not be what they need, and you have to kind of let go of the authority that you have in that moment and realize I just need to love them. I just need to be another adult in their life that loves them well. And if you do that right, the scriptures say it covers over a multitude of sins.
Oh, yeah.
And so you never want to get that one wrong. You want to just love them well. Because when they're older, you still want to have a relationship with them. You don't want to look back and regret all the other things that you could have done better. So sometimes you just have to realize I'm wearing a different hat than what I thought I was going to wear being a step parent.
That's good. We just have a few minutes left, and the objective of these videos is to kind of let people know that we, as parents, in all kinds of different situations, even those of us on staff, are not perfect because there is no perfect parent out there. So as we close, what are some final thoughts? Someone's watching this video; they're in this journey. What kind of encouragement would you give them? Maybe it's not going well. Maybe they've started a blended family and they're just struggling through it. Have someone who's navigated it for a couple of years and who doesn't get everything right, and you can't just do these three things. What would you say as far as encouragement to them?
Well, if it's not going well right now, you're not alone. It's not easy being a blended family. It's not easy being a step parent. But if it's not going well, ask yourself, do you need more shock absorbers in your life? Do you need a counselor? Do you need a therapist? Do you need a best friend? Do you need like a small group where people are checking in with you more often? Because when it's crazy and hectic and our lives are so go, and we don't have a lot of margin, we can say things and do things that we later regret. But if we had maybe more shock absorbers,
and talk through some things,
and talk through it more, know that there's people praying for us, know that there's people that are saying, you know what, I could see how that one would really make you upset, but I think you just gotta let that one go. When you hear that a little bit more often in your life, you go like, yeah, okay, I need to let that one go. And sometimes as people, we just get in these fights, and it's like, but was that fight worth it? Like, did that really help? Did that make your week better? Did that make your month better? Like, yeah, you were right, but in the long term, was it worth being right in that moment?
And in that moment, what were you modeling for your children? Because you're the example that they look at.
So I think ask yourself that question: do I have enough like breathing moments to connect with other people and process what's going on as a step parent? Because it's not easy. And but if you have more touch points with people, I think you'll realize, I'm doing this a little bit better than I was before.
I love that idea of a shock absorber. Life's bumpy, and if you're not intentional, and at Cornerstone, community groups I think are a great next step for someone who's going, you know what, I need a shock absorber. We have a great care team. Hey, that's all right. And so we'll talk about that a little more as we wrap up the video here in a second. But thanks for hanging out.
This is great.
Thanks for talking and letting us know that there's hope out there if you're journeying this journey. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm glad to be part of it. Yep.
Awesome. Great conversation with Matt. I just really enjoy his heart for wanting to parent his kids well in the journey that God has him on. And Amber, tell us some resources that we can kind of lean into coming out of his conversation.
Yeah, so down below you'll see a few resources that we've attached, some links for you to follow. But more than anything, we just really want to encourage you guys to get plugged into community. Here at Cornerstone, it is our passion that people get connected and feel like they can have these hard conversations about life and the things that you're going through. So much like Matt said in our conversation about how he leans into those people that he trusts and values, and knowing that it's not just him and his spouse, but it's also their kids, and it's how are you navigating that, knowing that there are certain things that maybe you aren't going to do the same way because you're a step parent. And so we here at Cornerstone really want to help you guys just navigate this crazy parenting thing that is so hard to get right, and we probably get it wrong way more than we get it right, but we would love to come alongside you and walk that with you.
So reach out. We'll put contact information down below, and again, if you are enjoying these videos, click like, but also subscribe. Subscribe so you don't miss them. We have some really cool conversations coming up.
There's so many parenting topics out there that we all get wrong, but we want to just help you guys approach all of those in a different way.
Honestly, if there's a topic that you would love to see us cover, reach out to us. Let us know, and we will make that one of the videos we talk about in an upcoming episode. But again, thanks for watching. Take care.